Sir, do you think that these reforms have the capacity to cushion the shock which the Indian economy...
problem. It's wavering. Sometimes
Dr. Bhandari, am I audible to you?
Yes.
So, are these reforms good enough to create some sort of a shock resistance?
So these reforms are, by the way, creditable. They're amazing how the government has been able to get all parts at the state level and obviously at the union level to agree to a set of rates, which is getting to be very difficult process. So on that front, it's fantastic, and it gives a lot of confidence in the ability of the Indian political system to come to terms with what is really required. However, the impact of the Trump tariffs will be immediate. These reforms which have happened on the GST front will take a long time to yield all the positive benefits. They were really important, they were critical, and I'm glad that the government has been able to do it. However, they will not be able to by themselves offset the great destruction that some of these Trump tariffs can cause.
Ambassador Jayandas Gupta, your opening comments on this. Do you think that the coupling of second generation reforms are required with this GST Diwali bonanza?
Well, I wouldn't say it is a bonanza, but the Prime Minister had mentioned it in his Independence Day speech also, and this was long overdue. The rationalization of the GST rates, the abolition of the 28% slab, which the industry, I think, was clamoring for. So all that has taken place, and basically I think it helps the small industry sector, the consumers very much, because all the essential goods, they have been now brought down to 5 or 0, and the other goods and services from 28%, 99% of the products which were at 28%, they have been brought down to 18% now. So it helps the consumers, and it is expected to give a fillip to consumption expenditure, along with the income tax rebates which have been announced. So all in all, I think it is a very good step, an excellent step, and it shows the path to further rationalization in future, when perhaps from 2 rates, it would be 0 and something like 10-12%, which would be ideal for the economy. And as Mr. Bhandari has mentioned, all the states have been on board on this. So that is a great achievement of the government to bring about consensus on this decision, because everybody would be on the same page.
Okay. Mr. Garg, your opening comments on this. Do you think it's going to spur consumption?
See, the connection between the Trump tariffs and the GST 2.0 reform is very tenuous. The assumption is that because the exports don't attract any GST, and therefore the exports are not sort of subject to the GST kind of rationalization or rate reduction or whatever. So that connection is not there, but the connection comes from the fact that in case there is a reduction in exports and the exporters are not able to export their products outside and have to sort of see the domestic market to absorb them, then the reduced GST may spur the domestic demand to absorb that surplus. So that is the connection. But in this connection, theoretically, it makes absolute sense that if you have surplus exportable goods to be absorbed by the domestic demand created by lower GST, it should make sense. But if you apply it to the specifics, now let us take textile, for example. The textile 2,500 rupees and higher textile has been actually brought into the higher tax slabs. It remains in 18%, or it has been taken there. Now, that would in a way not create the demand for the textiles, shirts and other things which couldn't be exported. Look at the other kind of things, gems, jewelry, where we have the major exports to America. Now that has not been changed by these. The rates for them, whether it's the jewelry or other things, those are in that 2.5 and 3% bracket. That remains unchanged. So that's also not got affected. But other things, we need to chemicals, whether there is some difference caused by in the domestic prices because the lower GST. So we'll have to look at very specifically for each item. On the whole, I don't think there is any major or any appreciable impact of the GST reduction from the point of view of the Trump tariff threat.
Okay. Karthik, your thoughts on it. Then I go to the second part of reform. So I'm putting out an open question to you.
Right. Okay. So, a slightly macro view of this, Karthikeya. Hey, thanks for having me, first of all, and
It's always a
being
pleasure,
on the
Karthik.
show with such an august gathering. And, Mr. Lavish Bhandari may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the simplistic equation to understand GDP, which is pretty much the measure of the heft of an economy, is that GDP is a function of consumption. It's a function of government spending, investments by the private sector as well as by the government, and your net exports. So what we are looking at right now by way of this GST reduction is primarily the consumption side of this equation is likely to inch up higher. And when I say inch up higher, again, let's look at the two categories. Let's look at the merit goods, which are now attracting 5%, and let's look at the standard rate of 18%. Now, what the 5% slab does, Karthikeya, is that a lot of consumers who are not yet in the fold of consuming these merit goods, by way of a price reduction, the sticker price reduction, will now be able to consume those products. But something I'd like to repeat is what Mr. Subhash Chandra Garg mentioned yesterday. The people who are already consuming these merit goods, are they going to brush twice a day or twice more a day? Are they going to take a bath more number of times a day? Are they going to use more shampoo and more hair oil? Perhaps not. So those who are using these essential goods will continue to use them, and it's going to result in a little bit of saving for them. But those who are not using these goods now get into the fold, and that is going to give some consumption fillip when it comes to the 5% merit goods. Now, when you come to the 18% goods, and these are the ones, most of which have been brought down from the 28% to the 18% slab, that I believe is likely to spur greater consumption, and that I believe is something.
I think there's a bit of a freeze there. So, Dr. Bhandari, if you look at the ads that yes, Karthik, there was a little bit of a freeze. You can complete your argument. Karthik.
Yeah, so I'm saying if you look at, let's say, buying an air conditioner right now, which costs you 30,000 rupees, add a 28% GST to that, it becomes about 39,000 rupees. Now, with an 18% GST, it becomes more affordable at 36,000 rupees. So there's straight away a 3,000 rupees saving, and that becomes sizable. And that, I believe, is likely to spur greater demand and lead greater consumption in the economy. But at the same time, the tax collection of the government, the tax revenue of the government is likely to come down by this stated figure by the government as much as 48,000 crore rupees. So GST would have done its job, this GST reduction would have done its job if, let's say, the direct tax collection, the corporate tax which the government collects by way of this increased demand is more than 48,000 crore rupees of tax revenue lost to the government. So that is going to equate the GDP equation. The net exports, which is at risk right now, especially with respect to the United States, where the tariff war continues to be on, I doubt that is going to be offset by the rise in consumption.